Hi, my name is Bandhu, and the PAD taught me to devise.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach design in the Performing Arts Department at Washington University in St. Louis, and I am very excited to bring to you a new episode recorded last February that it features Bandhu. Bandhu is an award-winning actor, producer, co-founder. I'm very excited to bring an episode back to you here after a couple of episodes off, you might say, where we wanted to honor Anna Pileggi and Jeffrey Matthews on their upcoming retirement at the end of the spring 2026 semester. And so I'm excited to bring to you this really interesting graduate of Washington University. Bandhu is an award-winning actor. He's appeared in Oscar-nominated films Michael Clayton, Burn After Reading, Frozen River, and Can You Ever Forgive Me? He is currently co-starring opposite Oscar winner Riz Ahmed in the thriller Relay. You can now view that on all streaming platforms. Pun also recurs as Victor Landis on the TV show Elsbeth, and can be seen as Judge Yoon on Law & Order SVU. He's done some Broadway work, off-Broadway work, also a passionate advocate and recipient of an Obie Award and Tony Honor as co-founder of the Asian American Performers Action Coalition in recognition of the group's impact in increasing diversity within the industry. I am just so excited to bring to you this episode with Bandhu. Enjoy. All right, my guest today is Bandhu. I have been, shall I say, very, very excited to talk to you, because not only have you become highly recommended by previous PAD podcast interviewees, but I've dug into your background, and you're so multidisciplinary. You're a producer, you're an acclaimed actor, audiobook narrator, fill in the blank. I'm just so happy to have you on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for asking me, Rob.
Oh, you sound fantastic. I wish every guest also had the sound setup you do. It's fantastic. Anyway, I'm just tickled to talk to you, and I would love to just kind of get started sort of with a little bit of your backstory, as we typically do with our guests, a little bit of your bio, how you even, like WashU, even landed on your radar as an undergraduate student. If you could talk about that a little bit, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Actually, I had not heard of WashU. I was in New Jersey at a public high school, and I just decided, I opened up the U.S. News and World Report and looked at the top 20 national universities and, started reaching out for more information. And I applied to like 11 schools or something like that, something insane. WashU happened to give me a scholarship, actually. And so I flew out to St. Louis, and I fell in love with the campus. I was like, this is exactly what I dreamed of when I think of myself in college, and people playing frisbee in the quad, and, and having philosophical conversations, and everyone was so friendly and not pretentious at all. And it was, we
Nice.
WashU kind of became known as like the Harvard rejects, But,
That's fair.
But because of that, like we were, I think just not, nobody sort of, everyone was just so friendly, and I fell in love with it. And I was like,
Nice.
this is where I want to go.
Had you ever been to the Midwest before in your life at that point?
I had, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
Well, yeah, I had a couple of relatives that were in like Minnesota, and
Gotcha.
I had also visited Notre Dame, another school that I was considering, and I was like, hell no, do I want to, be in the middle of a cornfield?
Right. Now, I know your major here didn't really relate to drama, but did you do any, before we go forward in time, did you do any drama in high school? Did you dabble?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I sure did. Actually, I was like, I think my first spark came in. I was lucky enough to go to an international school in Indonesia, the Jakarta International School. It was kindergarten to 12th grade, and they really believed in inculcating the arts into every single aspect of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And so at like 5 years old in kindergarten, we were doing puppet shows, and also wayang kulit puppet shows, like, Balinesian puppet, shadow puppets. And
It's fascinating.
and the high school did these amazing musical productions in the spring that like all of high society in Jakarta came to the school because there wasn't any other theater there really of that kind, and
Sure.
these productions were amazing, and
Mm.
actually they were directed by my best friend's mother.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, at 5 years old, watching the high school production of West Side Story, and like just I still remember that moment of seeing all the dancing, and they were amazing performers. They actually like toured throughout
Wow.
Asia. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of that system where we did plays and stuff all the time, and I got a lot of attention for it. And so, it was just something that I fell into kind of, it became kind of a natural fit for me.
Sure.
And then when I moved to the States, it was, I didn't think it would be such a cultural shift really, because at international school, there were plenty of Americans, and I grew up reading Archie comics, and my idea of America was very skewed actually. When my dad was first transferred for his job at the World Trade Center, they put us up in Forest Hills, Queens at first, and I remember all the Asian kids were sitting at the same table, all the black kids were sitting at their table, all the white,
Hmm.
and that was so different than my experience at an international school where your difference was what was appreciated about you,
Sure.
and
Sure.
and
As it should be.
it
Yeah.
was the first time that I ever got beat up, and
Oh
uh
my gosh. Wow.
and I remember it was me and this kid who lived in my building, actually the supers kid, and we took a bus to school, and we were walking to the bus stop together. And then these kids just started like, chasing after us, and just beat us up. And it wasn't like I think they were just doing it to prove that they could, kind of thing, But they left us alone. We didn't get like terribly bloody or anything, and
Mm.
we picked ourselves up and got home. And then like 15 minutes later, there's a knock at my door, and my mother answers it, and it's the super, and he's like, "Can is pun free right now?" And she thought that maybe it was like a play date or something with their
I
child,
see.
and she was like, "Yeah, sure." We get into the super's car. He drives us back to the school area. He's got a gun across his lap,
Oh my God.
and he's like, "Who were they? Was it those kids? Was it those kids?" You know.
Oh,
And I was like, "Wow, welcome to America."
oh my God.
Um,
You're asked like a rolling like police lineup here is what you're essentially doing.
yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly.
insane.
But then we moved to the quiet, conservative suburbs of New Jersey, um, where I was the like one of two Asian people there, um, and everyone kind of grew up with each other. And I think there were like it was a really small high school, to answer your original question, of like 74 people, and it was
Mm,
actually a really good high school. Everyone was did sports, and they did debate club, and everyone was sort of. It was a very good high school, but because everyone had grown up with each other, I really felt sort of like an outsider in many ways, and being one of the few Asian people in the school, and I got picked on there too as well. But doing performing arts productions was my way. I actually I ate my emotions.
mm,
I became, I gained a lot of weight, and doing theater was my way of showing these people that you don't see the real me. That
mhm.
there's more sides to me than you recognize. And so like playing like the sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood or something like that, and you know here
Yeah.
was this like overweight honors
Yes.
class nerd who
Yes.
who is suddenly
Yeah.
domineering and commanding, and so
Mhm.
yeah, that was my method of expression.
Yeah, I think theater, at least in high school for me as well, it was sort of I was never any good at sports. I wore glasses. I got hit in the face with you name the kind of ball, baseball, soccer ball. And the theater for me was this sort of magnet, and I mean this in the kindest way possible, this sort of magnet for misfits, a kind of we embraced our diversity of nerddom. And, I was never any good and never did any performing, but I was hooked on this collaborative art form, just pulling ropes backstage was exciting to me. So, well, this is fascinating. So that you got to Wash U, and as I understand it, at least from your what your declared major was, didn't really pursue a major in drama. Did you always want it to be part of your patchwork of who you were?
Yeah, I never really considered it as a serious major
Mm-hmm.
because for me, theater was always extracurricular. Having immigrant parents, and it certainly wasn't something. And I never thought it was a possibility as a career.
Sure.
I didn't see people that looked like me on TV and film really, and when I did, it wasn't necessarily depictions that I would associate with myself. And in fact, at WashU, that those first couple of weeks, where all the groups are trying to get people to sign up and
Right.
stuff, the Asian Students Association was there, and I talked to them and stuff like that. But I remember actively thinking, oh no, I don't need to join a group for just Asians, like
Mm-hmm.
I get along with everybody. And I remember sort of actively sort of not wanting to necessarily be identified by my race,
Right.
especially given my experiences as an Asian in America. But I also wish that I was more political then. My major was actually ultimately political science. And I was interested in a career in diplomacy, and my advisor was, taught peace studies
Mm-hmm.
at the school. And I wish I had been more politicized then,
Mm.
because it wasn't until I graduated grad school, actually, that I truly realized sort of the stereotypes that are attached to Asians, and especially like going out in the world and auditioning
Sure.
for certain roles, and that 40% of all my roles required an Asian accent because we were
Mm.
always considered the foreigner,
Yeah.
or being the doctor that was the information giver, that was on the periphery of the story, that was never the heart of the story. The opportunities that were available were so few and far between, and so trapped in stereotypes.
Yeah.
I actually wish I was more politicized then.
Sure, I appreciate that. Yeah, we've this is a bit of a theme that Perone Yusuf Sada, who is one of our more recent podcast publications, has again expressed a similar kind of thing about being stereotyped, about being cast as the Middle East person who is the role of the terrorist, and it's just it's unfortunate, not surprising, sadly, but unfortunate. So, did you get involved I assume, in an extracurricular way here at WashU in an area of drama? Was it a student group or drama productions or both?
Yeah, so it was always something that I loved and wanted to be a part of, and as I said, I always kind of considered it as extracurricular.
Sure.
So that freshman year, I auditioned for a performing arts department production of As You Like It that
Hmm.
Anne Marie Costa was directing,
Nice.
and I got cast. It was I was one of few freshmen that was cast in that production, and that was such a great experience, actually, just to be involved with PAD folks, and who became my friends, and so their discussions about the classes they were taking made me sign up for Anne Marie's musical theater class, actually, which I learned a lot from. And the people in that class were amazing. Michael Holmes, he's someone that you should interview, actually. He's a
Sure.
PhD grad who's gone on to a career in musical theater.
Mm.
And I learned so much. Like even then, like he was so knowledgeable about musical theater in ways that like he expanded my horizons.
Wow.
So people like that, that really influenced me and made me, sort of have that, become I was always, I guess, a drama nerd, but
Sure. Sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I was in
Nice.
that clique. Yeah.
Nice. I find that fascinating how often, and I just witnessed this last night. We're currently in tech rehearsals for a 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, and there is I want to say first year student in my class. I teach a class on intro to theater production, and there's a young man named Esteban who was being mentored by a senior lighting designer, and this senior Zach is showing him how to run the board, how to make choices about color and how to make light, moving lights move. And it was wonderful to see. It's a craft of sorts that is, you learn as much from your classmates, I would think, as you do from your teachers.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I also took some other classes in the PAD as well. Yeah, I took a class with Anna Pileggi. It was a collaborative class where she was working with the playwright Joan Lipkin, who was interested in writing a play about what it meant to be Generation X.
Mm,
And so over the course of this class, we would come in with like journal entries and guided writing exercises, but then also movement exercises and create pieces about what it meant to be part of a generation. And that was so much fun. It was so creative. It just sparked when you're just like asked to create a movement piece
yeah.
about employment in the 90s, like and the whole class comes together and it's like it's suddenly a Kinko's, and we're all like copy machines, or a Starbucks or and we become espresso machine, like it was just so I'd never really done that kind of devised thinking where you were part of an ensemble, and that really energized me, impassioned me, and was sort of the beginning stirrings of my own thinking of myself as an artist.
Hmm.
And then Joan Lipkin took all of our ideas and then created a play over the summer. And then we came back in the fall and we started rehearsals for it.
Mm.
And we actually put the play on, and it was such a big success that the school actually paid to fly us out to be part of the first Seattle Fringe Festival.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
yeah,
Wow.
and so it's amazing to be able to be a part of a school that can do that, that
Yeah.
has the resources to be able to I mean, for me, it was to give their students a completely different experience,
Yeah.
where you felt like you were a professional theater troupe,
For
going into
sure.
another town and sharing a hotel together, and it felt like being on tour kind of. It was so much fun, and of course we all bonded as mates. Yeah, that was definitely a defining moment for me in my
Nice.
career at WashU. And then the other part of my theater career at WashU really had nothing to do with the performing arts department. I was part of the first production of all student theater, which I'm so happy to see continues to this
Still
day.
does. Yes.
And that was a bunch of students who were like, hey, we want to do other shows that the PAD is not necessarily doing, or it was people that weren't being cast in PAD shows, and people like Matt Berman, who influenced me a lot actually, and Jeff Pagliano were like, we're gonna create our own thing, and we're gonna apply
Yeah.
for funding from the
The student union.
student
Yeah.
union
Yeah. Yeah.
and put on a show.
Yeah.
And that was also such a great experience because it was probably my first experience where we were all sort of collaborating in every single aspect of the production,
Right.
and I sort of tracked that as sort of the first thing I ever produced, I mean, but it was, of course, I was just I was just an actor in it. I really wasn't part of the core team that actually did all the production work, but I learned so much from them, and more than anything else, it was that sort of, let's put on a show mentality,
Yeah. Right.
let's do it in the barn, Mickey, that really was formative for me.
Yeah, yeah. And as you said, AST is still around. I just saw a invited dress of Next to Normal 2 nights ago.
Amazing.
Yeah, they borrowed a bunch of platforms from our warehouse stock, and I hope I can pull this off. I meet them there at 5 a.m. next Tuesday to return the platforms. They end up striking, I think, all night, and they're like, "Yeah, can you make 5 a.m.?" And I'm like, first of all, why? Second of all, sure, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, they
We did
are.
all student theater did hair
Ah,
in its second year, and
nice.
that's the first time that I got naked, in the quad in the quad. Um,
That's right. You couldn't get any closer to Brookings
that's right.
if
That's
the
right.
performances take place right there in the quad. And as
And
I assume they did back then.
Yeah, they did in the
Yeah.
quad.
Yeah.
And certainly the performing arts department would probably never in their life have done hair, you know. And
But they did.
so oh, did they really?
They did. I know I've seen a poster in the Carson room, and I don't recall what year it was done. But I every time I look at it, I'm like, I'm surprised we did that show. Um,
Nice, nice. I'm glad to hear that.
well, I want to fast forward because I mean, you've had such a just amazing career. I don't want to skip over it, but you ended up going to Yale School of Drama for your degree. Was there, just out of curiosity, was there any time in between leaving WashU and starting grad school? Did you work in the industry for a while? Did you go straight to Yale? How did that work for you?
So after WashU, after I, had my political science degree in hand, and I was like, well, this is kind of useless. What am I going to do with this? And, like, do I go to law school? And I knew that I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't. Because theater and acting has always been such an intrinsic part of who I am and has shaped me so much that I knew I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't see how far I could go.
Sure,
And so I,
sure.
I moved back to my parents' house in New Jersey after I graduated, and there wasn't really a playbook. I took the train into New York City and went to the newsstand and grabbed a copy of Backstage, and
Hmm.
and and back then you had to mail your headshot and resumes.
Yes, yes. Snail mail, as it's called now.
Nail
Yes.
mail. And then you also had to have like a voicemail box that you
Uh-huh.
you rented, and if they were interested they would leave a message for you. And
Oh my
it you
gosh.
know a- and it was insanity what we
Of
did back
course.
then. But you
I'm
did
quickly
it. Yeah.
gonna I quickly want to interject because I'm gonna compare you to Herbie Hancock because there is a clip I share. I teach a class on creativity, and there's a clip I share where Herbie Hancock himself was a psychology major, I think, in undergraduate school, but he had this love of music, and he said at one point he actually looked himself in the mirror and said, "Who are you trying to kid? You have to go through that door. You have to at least try being a musician." And now he's Herbie freaking Hancock. So,
I love that. It's a
I
great
think
story.
that's a kind of a crossroads that you had at that moment, and I applaud you for taking that step.
Yeah, no, it actually it took a lot of, and I'm sure everyone goes through this. Is sort of like, okay, what do I do with my life now? And
Yeah.
um, you know, listening to your heart, I think is really important. But also, I think people don't understand like how difficult the acting world is, or how difficult it is to be an actor.
Mm,
That in some ways, not knowing
yeah.
uh, can actually be good. Like because you have no fear in a way,
Sure.
and you're just like figuring things out, and it's like, well, if other people did it, I can.
Mm,
But so to answer your question, yes, I started, working for free, doing, showcases off Broadway. And one of the things that I auditioned for that was really formative for me was to get into, speaking of Columbia University, they were holding auditions to have a troupe of actors that the graduate playwrights and the graduate directors would work with every week as part of Anne Bogart's class.
hmm.
It was a collaborative arts class, and there I think the Columbia grad actors were too busy with their own curriculum to be part of that. And I'm so glad, because the experience of being in a 3-hour class every week with Anne frickin' Bogart
Exactly.
as she sort of dissects the directing art form and the theater arts, and just the way that she sees things, and she's able to like break things down, and the questions she asks, and
Mm,
to be able to comprehend theater like I had never even imagined before.
yeah, yeah. I would have the same thrill being in the same room as I have been, thankfully, in my life with Ming Cho Lee.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
that's Ming Cho Lee sitting right there. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar, just
yeah,
like Ming's understanding of like space and time and how that relates, like to
yeah.
to set design. very similarly, Anne Bogart was talking about different dimensions that I hadn't even conceived of before,
Hmm.
and then working with these the directors and writers every week. Every week they would get a prompt where the writers had to create a short play, maybe based on a Greek tragedy, or a play that was that didn't have any dialogue in it. That was just stage directions. And then we would rehearse with the directors and then perform it at the class and talk about it. And that was what was like what really motivated me to go back to grad school. But also, like, again, it was that sort of devised the moment of being an artist, being able to think about these things and you were no longer I was no longer an actor who put on a role that, and then was, and the director would sort of move you around and then stage you, like
Yeah.
it felt deeper than that. I was involved in the act of creation,
Hmm.
in a way that penetrated. It was like the nuts and bolts, the actual architecture of the piece, as opposed to, assuming a story that had been, like As You Like It, for instance. You weren't just part of the story. You were building it,
Exactly. Yeah. What an
and
exciting time.
it really was.
Hmm.
And then my first job was actually doing traveling theater children's shows
Oh,
through the George Street Playhouse in New Brunswick, New Jersey,
nice.
where we did three shows, one for the primary school set, one for the middle schoolers, and one for the high school.
Okay.
And they were really great plays, actually. The first was about bullying. The second was about the immigrant experience, where the Americans spoke this gibberish language,
Hmm.
so that the kids really got the experience of what it's like to be an immigrant in a new school, not really understanding the language. It was brilliant. And then
Wow, fantastic.
the high school show was about anorexia, and really, and I played a gay character. Like
Mm.
it was great. And so we had to get up at, like, 5 o'clock in the morning, show up at the George Street Playhouse, load our own sets into the
Yes.
van, drive across New Jersey to the high school, set up the sets in their gym or whatever,
Yeah.
in order for the assembly to start at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would have to then, go on to do another performance later that afternoon at another school. And then we had to come back to the George Street Playhouse, load all the sets back in. We couldn't just leave it in the van. And then we got equity credit by understudying the main stage shows.
Oh, I
And
see.
so I was there like until like 11 o'clock at night, and I became really good friends with all the people that worked at the George Street Playhouse, and the visiting actors that came in, including Uta Hagen, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Um, I mean, my girlfriend at the time was actually the wardrobe mistress, and she
Wow.
engineered for me to have like Uda was willing to like talk to me as a young actor. It was just
Um,
me and her in her dressing room.
Amazing.
Like, it was
Wow.
amazing. It was amazing,
Legendary. Wow.
legendary. And you went into her bedroom. I mean, her dressing room, and you saw that there's this little mini calendar on her counter. And on a couple of dates, she has like a stickers next to it with like gold foil stars. And there are a couple of dates in that month that was showing that had a gold star.
Uh-huh.
And she told me that those are the performances where she felt that she succeeded
Oh.
in doing everything that she wanted to do. Um, and it was only like one or two stars for the whole month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just amazing to see sort of how seriously she took this craft, and the standards that she held herself up to.
Hmm.
And but yet also like not taking it so seriously. Like, she was
Yeah.
like laughing and, free, and, it wasn't
Yeah.
sort of like matronly or anything like that.
Sure.
Or they also did a Chekhov piece as part of that season, and I had to understudy that. And so, like, I learned so much from these professional actors, and it was at that point that I was like, okay, I need to go back and actually get the training that I never really got at WashU. And so that's when I started applying to grad schools.
Wow. Man, I got into Yale, which is no small feat, by the way.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so again, I don't want to squander too much of your time, but I'm fascinated by your career post Yale. That you've done so much work both in film and TV, Broadway. You were in Wit, opposite Cynthia Nixon. You've done so much, and a producer as well, an emerging producer as well. I've read your name as sort of being I believe you received an award for that very purpose. Can you talk a little bit about your career to this point in time that you've, I don't want to say been lucky, but you've worked hard to attain, and I'm just fascinated to talk to you about that journey post grad school
Yeah.
to
That
now.
that award for being an emerging producer, it was part of the New York Musical Theater Festival. It was for
Yes.
to highlight three producers under 40. So that was actually like 15 years ago.
Oh,
Um,
fair.
yeah. So I've emerged, Rob.
You've
Yeah.
emerged.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
But no,
I was
actually,
about 40 when I applied for an Opera America emerging designer thing. And
amazing.
we didn't actually advance. We were like, I guess we're not emerging. We'll just continue to stay in our shell, whatever that
Right.
means.
I think that's true for like a lot of artists. You know, it's like you've done it for so long, and then suddenly you're like, wait,
Yeah,
I'm still emerging. Like, at what point do we arrive? You know what I mean?
exactly. But you've done some amazing, amazing work. Have you worked with, like not just Uta Hagen, which is, by the way, not on your website, which I think is
Well,
fascinating, but
I did not work with her. I
I
mean,
understand. I understand. But isn't that something that someone like a legend, and I'm thinking to a point in my career, I did a show at Cleveland Playhouse, directed by Michael Bloom. It was Glass Menagerie, set right here in St. Louis, and Linda Pearl was in it. Linda Pearl, for those that don't know, was Fonzie's girlfriend on Happy Days. I know I'm going a ways back, but she was the consummate professional. She was playing Amanda, and I recall it was a dinner break. It was a 10 out of 12. It was 4 to 6, 5 to 7, whatever it was, dinner break. And she's up there on stage just in work lights, like running lines and blocking. And, she was really the marquee actress in that show. And yet, even she was still working to refine her craft. It took such inspiration from her and that performance going, yeah, you're never fully done, I guess, as an artist emerging. you're,
yeah,
ne- you're never really done doing, getting better at what you do.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I really believe that. I'm actually a member of the Actors Center along with Sanjit as well, where we do continuing education and for actors, and I think that's so important because it's a craft where you put yourself into the work, and you're growing and you're continuing to grow and develop, and that's gonna, it's interesting. Like I can see there was a casting director who reached out to my agent recently, and she was like, "Would Pun be available for this? For this like industrial? He doesn't have to audition for it. I just want to put him in for consideration." And so my agent reached out to me, and I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything on that day, and it's health and pension, and
Sure.
and." What is she giving to the clients? Are they just looking at like
Right.
my
Right.
legit reel and my headshot? And the casting director responded and said, "Oh no, I have an audition he shot, years ago that I love, and I'll just use that."
Oh.
And I was like, and then I actually didn't get it. They released the date, and I was like, could you ask her to send me that audition? And, I shot it like 4 years ago during the pandemic. But looking at that audition, I was like, oh, wow, I've
Hmm.
grown more as an actor. First of all, I look a little older
Well,
than this young doctor.
sure.
Uh, the pandemic really affected me, I guess. Uh, but also like like my understanding of like the camera placement, where now we have to do all these self tapes, and like
Sure.
we just like acting for the camera, and the classes I've taken at the Actor Center has like really has I could see it. I was like, I'm a
Of
better
course.
actor today than I was 4 years ago.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
so we're always constantly growing like that.
Hmm.
But to go back to your original question about life after WashU and then Yale, when I graduated from Yale, I had that moment that I was describing before, where a moment of realization of sort of how trapped and pigeonholed I was in this industry. At Yale, I felt like I was seen. I was playing Shakespearean characters, and I was being cast in original plays, and I was, like it was complete, non-traditional, colorblind, inclusive casting, whatever you want to call it, where the color of my skin and what I looked like did not define the roles that I played. And then to go out into the industry. I was working. I had a small recurring role on One Life to Live. I had, I was doing co-star roles on Law and Orders and stuff like that. And I was doing theater, regional theater, and New York theater. And I missed that spark that I was talking about, the collaborative,
Yeah.
devised spark where I'm treated as an equal collaborator, and I'm helping to build the show, and
Yeah.
so I embarked to create more opportunities for myself, and I created an off Broadway theater company modeled around the Yale cabaret experience, where it wasn't like a typical cabaret with songs, but like every week at school, it would be all student run, where you would do a play or something like off the beaten path. And so we actually created a theater company. There really wasn't, people talk about the Yale Mafia, but there really wasn't a Yale Mafia. Really, there wasn't sort of like a convening center where Yale grads could come and sort of be an artistic home. And that was sort of the pitch. And we, at the time, our board members were encompassed graduates from 2001, so I was the youngest, all
Uh-huh.
the way back to like 1969.
Whoa.
And so the network that these people had was quite far reaching. And we got submissions for plays, we raised money, we put them on, and we actually got a lot further for a small, theater company than I would have thought. We got some awards that first year, and a lot of, we got mentions in the New York Times and stuff like that. And I was, as part of the theater company, I was like the marketing director and the PR rep, and I learned how to. We connected with ART, a not for profit that taught me how to. We had a class on how to write press releases,
Wow. Yeah.
and so I was developing press contacts, and so that was exciting but also draining. And I also created an Asian American short movie festival called the 72-hour film shootout, which still continues today, actually,
Yeah.
where we were trying to encourage more Asian stories and to sort of show how easy it is that you could create an Asian movie in the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
And it was one of those competitions where you have to include like this line in your short film and this prop, and it was so much fun, and all the energy of like convening together at a bar at 8 p.m. to learn what the dialogue was that they had to include, and then frantically with your team kind of like putting something together and then shooting the next day and then editing it and having it submitted by 5 p.m. on Sunday. And that since has become like sponsored by like MTV. And
Sure.
anyways, so I got a taste for producing, and
Hmm.
I was like, well, I really enjoy doing this. And my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, found himself out of a job, and he was working in the finance sector. And he did some meditating, and he came to me and he was like, I really want to do something more creative. I hope you don't think that I'm copying you or something, but I think that producing would be a good match of using my
Sure.
financial skill with sort of something more artistic. And I was like, fantastic. Let's partner together. We formed a production company,
Hmm.
and we taught each other a lot, actually. And we took a class at the Commercial Theater Institute. We became members of the New Producers Alliance, which was an initiative of the Broadway League.
Hmm.
So we got to know some key people, and we had the opportunity to invest in a Broadway show, Glengarry Glen Ross, in
Wow.
2004.
Huh.
And at the time, I knew that Joe Mantello was attached, and that Liev Schreiber was attached, and that was a seminal work that had there was a Pulitzer Prize winning work that had never been to Broadway before. So this would have
I,
been its first
yeah.
Broadway revival. And I turned to Mark and I was like, I think we should do this. And, again, sort of another thread of like being so green and not understanding the process actually, helps to strengthen your bravado, I guess, or your strength of will to jump in fearlessly, because we were like, okay, well, we could raise $150,000 and be associate producers, or we could raise 250 and be above the title producers, and
How do you
and
make that choice?
and we were like, well, okay, go big or go home, right? As long as you have to raise 150, why not raise 250? And we had like 2 months to do it.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, no, we can do this, between your financial contacts and my, theater contacts. And so like um, however, what I didn't realize at the time was that like, Mark's friends in finance were like, wait a minute, you want us to invest in something that has a potential upside only because it's running. It was a limited run for 6 months.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, of a potential upside of 5% in 6 months, maybe. Um, I could put money in a CD and get an automatic guaranteed, 4%. The and you we found out that investors you have to love theater first, and
Exactly.
it was actually my contacts that proved more helpful, and I was literally like sending out blanket emails to all of my friends being like, do you know anyone that might be interested in investing in theater? And my friend who was a pharmaceutical sales rep was like, yeah, whenever I go to this doctor's office, he's got these like posters of theater posters all the time,
Yes.
like I'll connect you with him. And so like
Yes.
it was literally the story of Glengarry Glen Ross. We were
Yeah.
like literally cold calling people, you know. Um,
We understand you have some Broadway posters in your office. We'd
yes,
like to talk to
exactly.
you.
Right. Do you love Broadway?
That's right.
Um,
You've been profiled.
exactly. And
Um,
so, yeah, talk about targeted marketing. Yeah, and so that was a wild, wild ride, and then it ended up winning the Best Revival Tony.
mhm.
And actually, I just found out recently. I don't remember what I was. I was maybe doing a bio or something for myself. There's a Wikipedia page of like the first Asian Tony Award-winning producer on Broadway, and I went to the Wikipedia page, and it lists as the first person a person who was involved with Kinky Boots in 2007.
Oh,
And I was like, well, I won a Tony in 2005. And so I actually do think that I'm maybe,
that page
possibly,
should be
the
edited to
yes.
reflect that. Yes.
Yeah, if you know any, but I tried to actually, but the Wikipedia is like
Oh,
it's just really complicated. So
it's very
if
complicated.
anyone out there is a pro on Wikipedia and knows how to submit new information,
Yes,
call
there
me.
needs to be an "Oh, by the way" section of that page that says, "No, no, that's not true."
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well,
So yeah,
again, I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm just so inspired by your story, and I'm sure students that listen to this, prospective students, whoever they might be, alumni, will be very inspired as well. If you can say, as long as there's no NDA involved, what are you doing now? What's next for you?
sure. I just did a top of show guest star on a TV show called Elsbeth on Paramount Plus,
Hmm.
which was awesome. I have got two movies coming out this summer. One of which is I'm excited for both of them. One is an indie film. Actually, I maybe I don't even know if that is actually coming out because they're doing the
You
the
don't
f-
have to
the, the
say.
film festival circuit. But I do know that
I don't want
another
my question to get you in trouble. That's my
exactly
primary concern.
a movie that I shot starring Riz Ahmed, who's amazing, and Sam Worthington, called Relay, and I've actually got a really a pretty sizable supporting role in that, so
That's
I'm excited.
fantastic.
Yeah,
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 nice, nice.
and yeah, I'm doing a bunch of voiceovers. I was just in New York yesterday doing. Even though I do have a home booth, sometimes they require you to go into their studio still. Uh,
Oh,
and this was for an animated show called Key and High. And I'm doing. I've got an audiobook that I'm working on right now as well.
fascinating.
I was just nominated for an Audie Award for Audiobook of the Year
Fantastic.
for Richard Powers' book. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Again, I'm just so inspired by your story here. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. I really, really appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for asking me.
Yeah. All right. My deepest thanks to Bandhu for joining the PAD podcast, and maybe most importantly for his patience while we honored Anna and Jeffrey on the last 2 episodes. If you'd like to be a guest on the PAD podcast, please don't be shy, as we say in Texas. Feel free to email me at rmorgan@woostel.edu. I would love to put you on the list, and I'd love to interview you. So with that, have a happy new year, and enjoy the next episode coming out in just a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.